Welcome to the fourth in a series of short talks covering the key agreements used by the upstream oil and gas industry, and is the third looking at joint operating agreements. I hope you find it useful. Your feedback is welcome. Joint operating agreements are complex with many variations and alternatives, so it is not possible to cover all options. However, I aim to give a flavour of some of the issues to be considered, and of course I am happy to speak to my viewers on a one-to-one basis to give more detailed advice. My contact details are shown on this slide and are also given at the end of the presentation. We provide services to the oil and gas industry worldwide, and I have 30 years of experience. In this part 3, I look at the form and choice of the joint operation agreement model. A quick recap before we move on. In part 1, I explained why we need joint operating agreements. And in part 2, I listed the key constituent features. The first step is to consider whether our joint venture is to be an incorporated company or an unincorporated joint venture managed via a joint operating agreement. An incorporated joint venture is where the parties to the joint venture form a new jointly owned company incorporated under the laws of the country of its registration. With an incorporated JV, the JV parties are shareholders in the jointly owned incorporated company, and in place of a JOA, they have a shareholders agreement that sets out their rights and obligations regarding the management and conduct of the joint company. The incorporated company is an entity in its own right, with its own board of directors and possibly its own employees, although it is often the case that the shareholders will second their employees to work within the joint venture company. It is subject to the laws of the country in which it is incorporated, which may or may not be the same as the country in which it engages in petroleum operations. It is subject to taxation by the country of its incorporation. Generally, the JV parties receive their share of the profits via dividends paid by the JV company. In situations where the joint venture company is to operate alongside a production sharing contract, the PSC may direct hydrocarbons and revenues to the contractor party under the PSC, regardless of the structure of the JV company. An unincorporated JV is where the parties to the JV act independently. It is likely that the joint operating agreement will declare that they are not a partnership. While acting independently, the joint venture parties act together according to the rules of the joint operating agreement they have put in place. The previous presentation discussed operatorship, the role of the operating committee, the setting of work programs and budgets, and the right to sole risk. Under an unincorporated joint venture, each party is responsible for bearing their share of the costs, and each party receives directly their share of hydrocarbons produced by the joint venture. Depending on the jurisdictions that apply to the joint venture parties, each JV party may be required to sell separately their share of the hydrocarbons, i.e., joint selling is not permitted. Each joint venture party is responsible for their own tax position. Whether an upstream joint venture is incorporated or unincorporated depends upon the countries in which the parties operate and their preferences of the parties. In the UK, upstream exploration production joint ventures are generally unincorporated and are managed under the rules set out in the joint operating agreements. On the international stage, incorporated joint ventures are more common, reflecting that incorporation is sometimes a requirement of the host country. Incorporation can introduce tax complications, and there may be problems in repatriating profits, so these matters must be carefully considered when first establishing the joint venture. There are a number of different model joint operating agreements that can be used. Choice of the applicable joint operating agreement model depends on a number of factors, mostly custom and practice, but may also be impacted by the expectations of the host country. In the UK, new joint operating agreements are based on the model form devised by Oil and Gas UK, which is the trade body formed by upstream companies. Licences issued in the UK have a condition that the Secretary of State for the Department of Energy and Climate Change must approve all joint operating agreements, and DEC make clear that they expect all new joint operating agreements to be based on the Oil and Gas UK model form. For international work, new joint operating agreements are generally based on the model form devised by AIPN, a professional body formed by international petroleum negotiators. There are many similarities between the AIPN and the Oil and Gas UK forms. Any differences are mainly due to the different requirements of international work, where often special rules are imposed by the host country. The Netherlands has its own tradition of joint operating agreements, reflecting the civil code of its legal system and also its system for issuing licenses. Our next short presentation continues looking at joint operating agreements by discussing the common provisions found in the JOA. I hope that you have found this short presentation interesting. If you have any questions or would like to discuss a particular issue, please do not hesitate to contact me. You can call me on the UK 020 7100 6501 or email me at tony.dayton@blackcatenergyservices.co.uk or just Google Black Cat Energy Services to find my website.